of what I think are useful hints and tips regarding map reading and talk rounds and time management through a ride. If you've got questions, ask as we're going through. It's not going to be me talking the whole time. And this is basically just me sharing experience from the last however many years I've been doing endurance, and hopefully helpful hints and tips moving forward for anyone who wants them. So if I share my screen, we'll go with that one, share, and there. That's fine. There we are. Right, so unfortunately the picture came up a little blurry. Just by way of introduction, map reading is obviously a very important skill for endurance riders. We are lucky in SERC that we get a map and a talk round. I've ridden internationally. Australia, you don't get anything. In England, you just get a map. So up here to have the map and the talk round, we are quite spoiled. They are incredibly helpful tools, but takes a while to get used to them and get to know them. And then there's the added challenge of sitting on top of the horse and trying to read them. But some of the most important things that maps give us are, they help us to understand the terrain that we're going to be riding over and is coming up. They help us to plan where we're going to have to go slower, where we're going to have to make up time. And that overall allows us to judge our pace, keep track of our speed, and make sure that we're riding comfortably the whole way. I'm sure we've all been in the situation where you've missed a turning or the track wasn't quite where you're expecting and now you're panicking about making the time. I have been in the situation where I've actually gone too fast because the tracks were better than I thought and had to slow up and loiter around a corner. And again, you just learn from these experiences. I think the main thing to remember when it comes to map reading and talk rounds and these sort of things is there's no such thing as a silly question. We all started somewhere. Everyone has their own experience and their own useful hints and tips. So if you're ever in doubt or ever worrying, just ask. There's a wealth of expertise and knowledge and experience within SERC and Tayside. A quick post on the forum, or if you want to run the gauntlet of Facebook, then that can be a useful tool as well. So always ask. It's really useful. So two of the things that I wanted to really pick out for what a map is useful for is the first one is contours. I'm sure we've all come across contours before. They're on a lot of maps, but I think there can sometimes be a little bit of misunderstanding about what they are and what they show. So contours indicate how steep and rugged the terrain is. The basic premise is that these orange lines here, which I've stolen a bit of a screenshot of the map from the Scottish Championships this year. These orange lines here indicate how, if they are closer together, it's steeper. So each line, they go up in increments of 10 meters. So you see that on this stretch of track here, we went from 80 meters above sea level to 100 meters above sea level in quite a short space of time. So that, to me, before I've even got to the ride, I know that's a steep hill. I know that's going to be a climb. And then, so that also allows you to figure out where the flat bits are. So while the contours around here are quite close together, in this bit of road here, you're going along parallel to the contours. So you know that bit's flat as a pancake. I can confirm, having ridden it, that that is a beautiful bit of flat road. You turn right and you go up a steep hill. And you can judge these bits before you get to a ride by looking at your map and knowing what's coming. So you know that if your horse isn't fast up a hill and you're going to be slower on this section, that you maybe want to go a little bit faster on this section to compensate for that. So contours are a really, really easy tool to be able to judge what terrain you're coming up against. And they're a really good indication of what's going on under your feet before you even set eyes on the place. Maps are incredibly important and useful for familiarizing yourself with a ride before you even got there. And that's a really, really useful tool. So contours are your friend, worth looking at and keeping an eye on, because they can really help you around a ride. The next bit that I want to indicate, as I feel is important sort of map feature that every map will have, is the blue grid squares. Now, this is a screenshot from, some of you may well recognize it. It's from the Tensmuir ride, the old favorite. And this is from In the Forestry. So you can see there isn't contours here because Tensmuir is flat as a pancake. So one of the useful tools for judging how things are going is you can actually use these blue squares. Now, I've actually highlighted it over here just so it's really clear. If I move everybody's faces over there. Excuse me. So you can start to use these blue lines to judge how far bits of track are and how far you're going to be going. So we all know that around a ride, not every letter and turning has a distance marker against it. You might have something at checkpoint 2, but you might not have something at H, that is J, I cut it off a little bit, or I. But you know, and this is a lovely example because it goes lovely in parallel to said blue lines, that from about here to here is a kilometre. So you should know how long that's going to take you, and you can help judge and be like, right, okay, well, there's 2 or 3 blue squares between A and B, for example. So I know that's approximately 2 or 3 kilometers. And then you can start to work out how long it should take you to get from A to B. So they can be really useful tools moving forward to judge your distance, which then again can help judge your speed. But also if you're in the middle of the forest, and you're at this track turning, which might be quite obvious on the ground, and you're a little bit unsure of how far something's going to be, you can look at the blue grid squares and go, right, there should be a bend in the track about 1 kilometre away. And oh, look, there's a bend in the track about 1 kilometre away. So it can help you judge where you're going next. So there are 2 particular map features that I always find incredibly useful to look at before you get to the ride and also during. And everyone will have their own ones and pick up what works for them on a map. The other thing to remember is map reading is very individual as to what's going to work for you and what doesn't. So while everything I'm saying here is hopefully useful, remember that what I do maybe doesn't work for you, and you can find your own balance in that. Okay. So before you get to a ride, your map is a fantastic tool. I think that sometimes riders will come to a ride that they've maybe not been to before. It's been a busy week, or and they haven't actually looked at their map before they arrive at the start. I have been at race rides before, where people have gone at the start and then gone, well, do we go left or right? And I've been guilty of it because I remember a championship race ride a number of years ago where everyone cantered out at the start and cantered across the field and cantered out the wrong gate, and they were led by myself. And we got a little bit up the track and suddenly realized we'd gone the wrong bloody way. The entire race had to turn around, come back and go the correct direction, which is a little bit embarrassing. So study your map before you go to a ride. They come through in that week before you go. So while we're all very busy with preparation and packing and everything, take time, take an evening with a cup of tea or a glass of wine, whichever helps you remember better, and study your map. Take time to get to know the route and familiarize yourself with what should be coming, and look out for the hilly sections or the flat sections. You might want to highlight them, stick a yellow highlighter over the hilly bits so you can see them coming as you're riding along. Suss out the level of roadwork. Is the roadwork, well, we have a breakdown on Clubhouse, which is very useful to say there's going to be 5% roadwork. Is there going to be 10% roadwork? Is that roadwork lots of little sections where you can afford to take it easy? Or is it one big section of road where you're going to have to keep trotting because otherwise it's going to be a huge section of walk that you have to make up later? And that can help you judge where you've got to get going and where you can pull back. And the other thing that I find incredibly useful, which I'm going to take you through now, is the use of other resources to familiarize yourself with key points. So what I mean by that is use Google Maps, because it's a fantastic tool and it's there. So this is the championship route. This was the champs this year. As you can see, big map covering a lot of area. How on earth are you going to familiarize yourself with this when you've never been there before? So what I'm going to do is take you the example of A just here. So if you zoom in, you can look at your map. We get lovely PDFs now, so it is important. You can zoom in on your computer, or you can print it out and look at it, get the magnifying glass out, whatever. So A is one of the first points on the route, and I, for example, have a look at it and will familiarize myself with what I should be riding through and over coming up to A and away from A, so that when I get to A on the horse, it feels familiar and I'm not questioning, is this A? Am I in the right place? So I know that I should be coming up a long straight track here, and that is 4 fields. So I know there should be a lovely long bit of track where I go through. It might not be a fence line, but there will be a difference between this bit here and this bit here. There'll be a ditch, or there'll be a fence line, or there'll be a break in the crop. Should be something there, and you can count your way up to A. I also know that when I get to A, I'm taking a sharp 90-degree right-hand bend onto a tarmac road. So I know that even if this is beautiful, long, grassy track, because that is just a track, you don't know if it's going to be stony, you don't know if it's going to be grassy, you don't want to be cantering here to then have to turn that way. So it's important to, judge. I mean, you can see that coming, and you should be able to see that coming, but knowing you're coming up to A and you need to slow down can be incredibly useful. So the next thing I will do when I'm going around my route beforehand to familiarize myself is get out Google Maps. So we've been able to pinpoint where A is. It's just here. And we know that because you've got these 2 little round things and the lovely 4 fields. And now, having looked at Google Maps, I know that I should be riding through crop. There should be crop on either side of me. It's not likely to be fields of grass with cows in them or sheep in them. And it's not going to be forestry. I know I should be riding crop through here. And that gives me, again, more familiarity with where I'm going to be riding before I get there. And then finally, you can use the little yellow mani and Street View. So this is said track here that we rode up. I was able to look at this on Google Maps beforehand using the Street View, Google Street View. So I know that when I come up to A, there's a sharp 90-degree onto a road, but I know what I've got and what I should find, and it will feel familiar when I get there. So when I did arrive here, I just kept going because there was no, is this A, or whereabouts am I, where do I need to go next? I'd already figured that out. I'd already familiarized myself with the route. So you can use this little yellow mani on Google Maps the whole way around if you want. I did actually, because it was the champs, go all the way along this road with the little yellow man from Google Maps. And it was really helpful. I knew where the bends were. I knew where the little steeper bits were. And by familiarizing yourself with the route before you even get there, you can take away a lot of the worry and anxiety on the day of where am I in the right place? So Google Maps is absolutely your friend, and it's pretty easy to use, and everyone has access to it, or most people have access to it. So a really useful tool. Now you might not always have Google Street View. For the links of Tensmuir, there's only a small section of road right at the start, but you can still use Google overview to look at your tracks and familiarize yourself with where you should be. Sometimes you can zoom quite far in to know what the vegetation is going to be looking like, and that can all be really helpful. During the ride, it is important not just to switch off and follow the arse of the horse in front, because that means you're relying on them actually knowing where they're going. And that is not always the case. Some people do get on a track, switch off, put their horse into canter, they look at the view, they're enjoying where they're going. Oh, isn't that bird nice? You're blabbing to your friend next door, and suddenly you realize that you're about 2k past the turning that you should have taken because it was a little one on the right. So monitor your map. Don't just switch off, as I say. You should be just have it on your side and just checking it periodically the whole way along, even if it's a long straight. And that way you're looking, your eyes know where to look at the map. You're automatically primed to be in the right place, so you don't have to get out and go, where am I? Oh, we were there 20 minutes ago. You've followed your route all the way around, and right, we should be coming out to left-hand turn. There it is. Brilliant. Markers, great. Go. Nice and easy. And this means that you can keep the flow up through the ride. You're not going to stop at every corner and check your map and waste time, and the horses get fidgety and they do silly things, and you get caught up by the group behind, and suddenly there's loads of you riding together. You keep your flow, you keep your momentum, and it's amazing how much easier it is to keep your rhythm and your time correct at that point in time. Watch for key landmarks and be aware of passing them. So if you've looked at your map beforehand, you're cantering along, or you're going along this track, and about halfway along there should be a bank of woodland. You clock that in your brain, go, right, we're halfway along, great, we've passed that bit of woodland that I know should have come. And that way, if you do get to a point where you're unsure of where you've been, it's much quicker to get back to where you know you were, rather than having to go all the way back to the last letter marker, because that's the definite point when you knew where you were. And always look ahead for the next turning. And that's not to say don't appreciate the views and enjoy the company and enjoy the time with your horse, but do that along with keeping an eye on your maps, rather than enjoying the view too much, enjoying the company too much, and then having a panic because you don't know where you are. So what I mean by those examples there was, and again, this is the championship map, a similar section. So you're watching, when you go along this bit of road here, that you don't turn right until you get to a bunch of farm buildings. So while there's quite a few fields here, there's a track there, so that could be where you need to go. There might be multiple gate openings, so it could be any of them, but that you come up here, you turn left, you go out the village, and you go all the way along to these buildings. So you can just go all the way along to buildings, and then at the buildings, you turn right, and there will be markers to show you where to go. In this case, there was a rather lot of crew vehicles to show me where to go, so that did help. Again, you're cantering up here, you go past a band of trees, and then you pop out into another field. This one was particularly useful to know where I was going, because as I said, as I've given the example there, loads of gates, quite a number of fields along here. There could be any one of the entrances, but I know I have to go halfway along these woods before I go in. So that meant I could just trot all the way along here, nice and easy, and know that I pop in at the woods, rather than worrying about, is it this field that I need to go in? Or is it that field that I need to go in? Or, why I need to go round there somewhere. Halfway along the woods, pop in you go, nice and easy. And that can make a real difference to, again, keeping track of your surroundings. So clear features that are easy to follow are your friend, bits of woodland, collections of buildings, random monuments that are marked on the map. We didn't actually go past the big monument that is this area is famous for, but I have done in previous rides, and it was a real we aim for that because we know we're going there. Okay. Talk rounds. We're really lucky to have these in SERC, as I said. They don't have them down south. In England, all you get is a map, and that's Wales as well. I'm pretty sure the same in Ireland. And as I said, Australia, again, nothing. Talk rounds can be very clear, or I have been at rides where they have been written by someone who knows the ride so well that they don't realise how well they know it, and perhaps their explanation isn't as good as it could be. But they're always very useful for describing the terrain and explaining the trickier navigational points. So they're always worth reading a couple of times and looking at a couple of times before you go to the ride. And look at, if you can follow the map and follow where you need to be with your finger, while you read the talk round, you're familiarizing yourself with where you need to be. You know exactly how many, you know your way around the map before you get there. So they're really, 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 really useful. And don't be afraid to play with a talk round and alter it to suit yourself. The talk rounds will come through to you as a Word document. So they're easy to edit and change to suit you. And I'll give you an example of this. This is the 30K talk round for the Tentsmuir ride. And what I did is split it up. So where the letters had the distance markers on, that was a section. And then I didn't make a time up for that one. And the reason I have two distances here is because I did the 30K route twice. So rather than having to swap talk round at the vetting, I just had the second distance on there. So I didn't have to change my maps at all at that vetting. And this works if you're doing the same loop twice like we were in this case. And then, I've made my timings and the distances I need to hit bigger and highlighted them. So they're really easy to keep track of where you are in the talk round as you go through. There's easy broken down bits on the way through. And you can play around with the text size that suits you. I tend to make things a bit bigger because I've got my glasses on, but if they've steamed up or are covered in water because it's been raining, or I've had to leave them at the crew vehicle, I need to be able to actually see what I'm reading. So I make my letters bold and I make things I need to hit bigger. Another example is Fanula, my sister, highlights different sentences to different colors. So she knows that she's on a blue sentence in this one. So she'll follow that blue sentence till she gets to the next point. Everyone's got different methods to play with your talk round and edit it to suit you and what's going to work for you and how it's going to be easiest to read for you. You can get rid of the things at the top with the title, etc., to give yourself a bit more space on the page. Always useful having the emergency contact number, though. Never delete that off. But you can get rid of the bit that says 10th Muir Ride, October 2022, because it's useful information when you get it through, but you don't need it halfway around the ride, because you should know it's 10th Muir and you should know it's October. So you don't need that on the top crowd. Generally, the weather gives it away. So do play with the top crown to make it suit you, and read it a few times over a couple of days before you get to ride. Really, really useful tool. And if there's anything that's unclear in a top crown, get in touch with the ride organizer and say, what do you mean by that? Again, maybe post something on the forum or run the gauntlet of Facebook. So timings, I'm going to move on to now, because that's important. I have picked out the 2 bits about timings from the rulebook. I apologize that the camp ride timing is hidden behind this doodad, but there's nothing really too important there. So we all know that at taster and pleasure level, we have to do a minimum of 8 kilometers an hour and a maximum of 11. And then training and above is a minimum of 9 kilometers an hour and no maximum speed. However, for grading, there are different minimum speeds. And it's important to remember that, because in order to achieve the grading that you're aiming for, you have to do, for a bronze thistle qualifier and a bronze thistle final, you have to achieve 9.5 kilometers an hour. And again, there's no maximum speed. And then for silver and gold, it is 11 kilometers an hour or above. So it is always useful to be aware, if you're grading, of what the minimum speed for your grading is. But do keep in the back of your mind that if you go for a ride and you're going for a grading, if you go for your second bronze thistle qualifier, you know you have to do 30k at 9.5 kilometers an hour to achieve it. But on the day, things don't go right. It doesn't go well. Your horse isn't running very well, or the tracks aren't what you expected, or you've had a problem, and you're not going to make that 9.5. Don't worry about it. As long as you do more than 9, you'll still get your completion rosette. And while you might not get your qualifier, you might not get your BTQ, you can still complete even if you're slightly underneath. So always remember remembering that. There's no point pushing your horse for a speed that it's maybe not going to achieve that day if you know you can still qualify. And this particularly comes into effect if you're doing your silvers or golds, where the minimum speed is a little bit higher. You might not hit 11 that day, but you can hit 9 still and still complete the ride and still have a lovely time. So always be aware of the minimum speed of what you're going for on the day. And remember that you don't have to hit the qualifying speed for your thistle grading in order to complete the class. And these can both be found in the rulebook. They're really lovely, easy tables, nice and easy to read. And this has been simplified from when I was younger.
Yeah.
So now this might be very sort of, a lot of you may already know how to do this, but it's something that I have spoken to a few people about, is how to actually work out your time. And I've got an easy formula that I wanted to share that hopefully everyone can follow. So they've got 2 examples here that we can work through. So the main calculation that you always need to remember is that time is equal to the distance you've traveled divided by the speed you want to go by. Okay? Time equals distance over speed, like we all used to do in maths. Although I'm sure many of us have tried to forget our high school maths classes. So looking at a basic example, you want to do your bronze thistle qualifier, so you're doing 30k. The first distance that you're given on the ride is 8 kilometers. So you know at A, for example, you've covered 8k. You want to know how fast you should be going, or how long it should have taken you to get to A, in order to know that you're going to make your target. There's no point in having a time worked out for 30k when you can have times worked out for 8, 15, and 22k as well. If you can work out as many targets to hit throughout the ride, it's much easier to make up any time you may have lost. So in this example, 8 is the distance to get to A, and you know that you need to go at 9.5 kilometers an hour in order to achieve your bronze thistle qualifier grading. So if you plug that into your calculator, 8 divided by 9.5, and it comes out with 0.8889. What the hell does that mean? That's not a time. What that is meaning is, in mathematical terms, if we want to get complicated, you're going to get there in 0.8889 of an hour. It's not helpful because there's 60 minutes an hour, so it doesn't work. The easiest way to figure out how many minutes that is to times that number by 60, because there's 60 minutes in an hour. So if you times 0.888889 by 60, you get 53.36664. So 54 minutes. So and you can write it on your top ground, or you can write it on your map, or you can have a separate list. Although less paper you have to carry, the better. You know that if you want to make 9.5 kilometers an hour, you should get to A, which is 8 kilometers in, no slower than 54 minutes. And that gives you a target to hit. So if you get to A, which is this 8 kilometers, and you get there in 55 minutes, you're going a little bit too slow. So that allows you to realize that you need to go a bit faster in the next section. And then this moves us on to the next example, which is just the same work through example, but this is a longer in. So the next distance marker you're given is 22 kilometers in. Again, you want your minimum of 9.5 kilometers an hour. So you put 22 divided by 9.5, and that gives you 2.31. So 2.31 of an hours. So again, you times it by 60, and it gives you your number of minutes. So you need to get to, let's call this B, you need to get there in 138.97 minutes. So that that is 2 hours and 18 minutes. And the easiest way to work out how many hours it should be is to write out your 60 times table. So that's 60, 120, 180, 240, 300. And then you can work out where 138 sits in that. So the giveaway here is that you've got 2 point something hours. So you're going to be 2 hours. And then the 2 hours is 120 minutes. So you take away 120 from 138, and that gives you 18. And that was a bit of a fluffy way of explaining it, but I hope that's made sense. If anybody's not understanding that, shout now, and we can go through it again. Nope, silence, I'll take that. I can have a second career as a maths teacher. God help anybody. So the next bit is, what if you're doing 2 loops or more? Remember that you will have a 40-minute hold. So this will come into effect for anyone who's doing their first 50K, or you're doing your first 60, or you're doing an 80. What's the easiest way to keep your timing simple? You've got a 40-minute hold for each vet gate. Easiest way to keep on top of that is, rather than trying to stop your clock when you present to the vet and trying to remember that, or going, oh crap, I was 5 minutes vetting there, so I need to take 5 minutes off my time, and it's not accurate, is just add 40 minutes onto your end time for every vet gate you go through, or 40 minutes and 30 minutes, because the second vet gate's going to be slower. And the easiest way to do that is, so for an example, the example I'm going to give here is, you're doing your 50K, you need a minimum speed of 9.5, you're on loop 2, halfway through, they've given you that you get to C, and that's 40 kilometers. So you do 40 divided by 9.5 to get the minutes, the same as we have done the whole way through. So you know that it's 4.21 times 60, that gives you your minutes, and then you just add 40 minutes. So now you know that your clock should read 292 minutes, which is 4 hours and 52 minutes. So while you might look at that and go, God, it's taken me nearly 5 hours to do 40K, you've got that 40-minute hold accounted for in there. So that means you come in, and we all know, your time stops when you present to the vet, and your 40 minutes is there. So you don't need to worry about that presentation time and when you cross the line and when you actually present to the vet, because that's your running time. So that's added into your overall time anyway. So the easiest way just to not have to worry about your timings and worrying about vet gates is just to add 40 minutes on for every vet gate that you go through. So for an example here, you're 80K, you're doing 2 vet gates, you have to do a minimum speed of 11 kilometers an hour. So you do 80 divided by 11, that gives you 7.27. You times that by 60 to give you 436 minutes. Then you add 40, you add another 40, so your actually riding time is going to be 516 minutes, which comes to 8 hours and 36 minutes. So that is your target time at the end of your 80K. including your two vet gates. You don't have to touch the dials and digits on your clock. And that should be easy to whether you use a digital clock or an analog. I prefer analog. I know other people prefer digital. But this means you don't have to buy expensive Garmins and trackers and rely on GPS signals and the app on your phone that goes off if you don't have internet or 4G or whatever. It's a nice thing on your wrist, easy to keep track of. You've got it written down in your map. Relatively simple. And there will always be folk within SERC who are happy to help if you're struggling with calculations or not quite sure if that sounds about right. Absolutely ask, because everyone has their own methods of doing it. So I might have explained this and people might be going, huh? But someone else may have a simpler way of doing it that works differently, that gets the same answer. So that was something that I wanted to cover. And that is the end of my presentation.